So let's look at the convention itself and look at the contents, at the substance of the convention. Well, it is a human rights instrument, so it creates obligations for states. It's important to realize that. Obligations that all contribute to a better protection from enforced disappearance. The convention affirms two new human rights. One that seems very obvious, the right not to be disappeared, not to be subjected to an enforced disappearance. It wasn't written in a binding instrument nowhere. And it confirms the right of relatives to know the truth about the fate and the whereabouts of the disappeared person. For the rest, it has provisions on all the dimensions, so the humanitarian, the suffering of the family should be addressed, but also the crime of enforced disappearance, so the criminal law aspects, and it creates obligations for states, their responsibility. They have to address the human rights violation of enforced disappearance. So it completes international law in maybe 6 different areas. First, it gives a definition. There was definitions in other international instruments, but no one that was legally binding at world universal level. It has a range of provisions on how to deal with the crime of enforced disappearance, how to describe him, how to include him in domestic laws, in domestic criminal law, who are the perpetrators, what are mitigating or aggravating circumstances. In a third category of provisions, it addresses all these measures you should take to avoid impunity. It has a range of provisions dealing with how states should cooperate, not only to find the person, but also for the penal prosecution, but also for addressing the needs of victims. In a 5th category, I would put a whole range of elements that have to do with prevention, how to avoid enforced disappearances, how to be careful with detention centers, prohibiting secret detention centers, having very clear rules for detaining persons. And in the last time, the convention defines the rights of victims, defines who are the victims of an enforced disappearance, and determines a range of rights, the right to the truth, but also the right to remedy, the right to reparation in a broad sense. The convention creates as well a monitoring body, a new committee on enforced disappearances. This committee is going to consist of 10 experts. They serve not as government representatives, but in their personal capacity. And this committee will have a range of means to watch over the compliance of the convention by the states who have ratified it. Now, that means this monitoring body will have different means to see if these states respect their commitment under this convention. The methods are, a very traditional one is review the reports that they get from states about how each state has been implementing, has been respecting this convention. They can also do country visits. So when they have the impression there is risks or there is enforced disappearance occurring in a country, at the invitation of that country, they can go and do a country visit. They will have the function of launching calls for urgent investigation as soon as they have the fear that somebody just has disappeared or is at risk of disappearing. That's a humanitarian function. But they will also be able to look into individual cases when there is an allegation that someone has been a victim of an enforced disappearances. They can receive the case and review it. They will also be able to receive complaints from one state against another state, called interstate complaints. And the last means of operating is to address a report to the Secretary General of the United Nations in cases in which they think, well, disappearances may occur on a massive scale. The convention was adopted after a few steps by the General Assembly on December 20th, 2006 and opened to signature in 2007. Usually it requires 2 steps for a country to adhere, to accept an international treaty. The first step is signature, it's mentioning your intention, and the second step is ratification, is which formally you approve, and your parliament usually approves that your state becomes party to that convention. Now it needs, the convention states it needs 20 ratifications to enter into vigor. And that was that number of 20 was just reached recently, which means from now on, from December 2010, the convention will enter into vigor. Maybe say something about the NGOs. The group of family members, of relatives of disappeared persons, and the NGOs who actively participated in the negotiations felt they also should start the campaign for the ratification of this convention and organized a coalition called ICAIT, International Coalition Against Enforced Disappearances. It has now 40 members, the big international human rights NGOs, but also the federations of relatives of disappeared persons, and this number of members is growing. This coalition pushes states to ratify, organize campaign events, wants states to recognize various of these competences of that committee. For instance, states have to declare that they accept the competence of the committee to review individual complaints or interstate complaints. We also are worried about the composition of this committee. We need 10 reliable experts in that committee to make sure the convention will get implemented. And that's maybe the last point. States need to take a whole range of measures at the national level to implement this convention and protect their citizens against enforced disappearances. So I invite you at the end of this speech to support us and help us in this campaign.